okay to be a man.
It's not okay. It's necessary. What the hell are we going to do without men? You look around the city here, you see all these buildings go up. These men, they're doing impossible things. They're under the streets, working on the sewers. They're up on the power lines in the storms and the rain. They're keeping this impossible infrastructure functioning.
Hello and welcome to Unreligiously. My name is Lauren and today we are going to be talking about the crab lord Jordan Peterson. If you found your way here, I'm guessing that Jordan Peterson has probably popped up on your radar once or twice. You might have seen his one Christian versus however many atheists video that Jubilee put out, where he then kind of backtracked and said that he really wasn't a Christian by any sort of Christian standards. He's also released several books, YouTube lectures, podcasts, and maybe even someone in your life has just really been influenced by him or heard about him, and that's where you learned about it from. I first heard about Jordan Peterson a long time ago from one of my brothers, actually, who had read his first book. At that time, Jordan Peterson had only released that first book, and we listened to it together on a road trip, and I thought it was great. I really did enjoy it, and it's been really sad for me to see how Jordan Peterson has continued to manage his online presence and continued to speak deceptively in the way that he characterizes things. For those of us that were raised in certain religious spaces, especially evangelical ones, hearing Peterson can kind of hit us a little bit differently. His ideas don't always sound new or groundbreaking. In fact, they often feel eerily familiar, like echoes of things that we were taught as divine truth, but are now just wrapped in a bunch of psychobabble jargon and intellectual sounding language.
Yeah, that there are reasons to not want to have children. One reason is an overwhelming self-centered narcissism. That's not the only reason, but it's definitely one reason. And people talk about, the interference with their personal freedom and their desire to pursue their career. And in that, I read something like the absolute inability to ever sacrifice your own narrow self-interest, and I do mean narrow, to the what would you say, concerns and needs of other people. And so
today, I want to take you guys through a deep dive, not just into Peterson's worldview, but into how that worldview actually interacts with the evangelical one that a ton of us are trying to untangle ourselves from. This is part analysis, part deconstruction, and part personal reflection. Buckle up because it's going to be thoughtful and layered and probably a little bit long, but I think that it is worth it. So let's dive in. To set the stage, Peterson's appeal is not really hard to understand. He talks about responsibility, meaning, and order, especially focusing on young men who are feeling lost or lonely or struggling with their mental health. We know right now that this is a problem. There is a loneliness epidemic for men, particularly young men, and young men are struggling to find meaningful relationships and purpose. He offers really clear rules in a chaotic world. Tells people to clean their room, to face the dragon, to stand up straight, and for a ton of people, this is easily practically applied and can feel really empowering. But the thing is that for those of us who grew up in evangelicalism, we were already fed a framework that is almost identical to this.
Virtually every woman I've ever met, with almost no exceptions, and this includes extremely high-achieving women on the career front, pretty much by the time they're in their late 20s, their primary goal is to have a child.
Life is a battle between good and evil. There is a divine order, clear gender roles, and strict morality. If you just submitted, trusted God, and followed the rules, then you would be okay. So when Peterson talks about hierarchies, order, and tradition, it doesn't feel revolutionary for a lot of us. It feels like a reboot or a sophisticated remix of theology that we already know way too well. So that's what we're digging into. Not just what Peterson says, but why it resonates so deeply with people from religious backgrounds. And how, if we're not careful, it can pull us back into ways of thinking that we've been trying to leave behind. Let's start with the foundation, the big ideas that Peterson returns to again and again. The first one is order and chaos.
The chaos is hiding in what's irrelevant. And that's a very interesting observation, because since the chaos is virtually infinite, it's a real question. Where the hell do you put it? Well, you put it in what you ignore. And you can ignore it as long as it isn't actively interfering with your movement forward. You can assume that it doesn't matter. That it isn't matter. That it doesn't matter. Same thing.
Peterson frames existence as a constant tension between order, which is masculine, structured, and known, and then chaos, which is feminine, fluid, and unknown.
One of the things that happens
He argues that hierarchies like dominance and competence structures are natural, even biological, and that disrupting them leads to societal disorder. The whole clean your room mantra is about conquering chaos in small ways so that you can face the larger world. For many people, this does sound empowering, but for those of us who know the theological system built on divine order, male leadership or headship, and a fear of moral collapse.
Well, one of the things I want to come back to is this idea. So that you say in the book, there is masculine order and feminine chaos.
No, actually, I say that those are symbolic representations of the two things.
Right, okay. So why? Why is order masculine?
I think it's because our primary social hierarchy structures are fundamentally masculine.
And that's not the patriarchy?
Well, it's not the modern idea of the patriarchy, that's for sure.
I mean, that's my idea of the patriarchy, which is a system of male dominance of society.
Yeah, but that's not my sense of the patriarchy.
So what's yours?
Well, in what sense is our society male-dominated?
The fact that the vast majority of wealth is owned by men, the vast majority of capital is owned by men. Women do more unpaid labour.
Very tiny proportion of men.
It's the same foundation with a new coat of paint. The second point that Peterson comes back to time and time again is responsibility and suffering.
Diet of rights and freedoms, and there's something about that, especially, there's something about that that's so pathologically wrong. And people are starving for the antidote, and the antidote is truth and responsibility, right? And it isn't because that's what you should do in some I know better or someone knows better for you what you should do sense. It's that that's the secret to a meaningful life, and without a meaningful life, then all you have is suffering and nihilism and despair and all of that and self-contempt, and that's not good. And so it's necessary for men to stand up and take responsibility, and they all know that and are starving for that message.
It's a really key theme. Life is suffering, and the way through is to take on responsibility. Face the dragon, pick up your burden, don't wallow, confront the pain, and transform it into something else. Again, it is powerful stuff, but it's familiar and really hard to apply. Evangelicalism frames suffering as a path to redemption. If you were struggling, you were called to carry your cross, to confess your sin, and to take personal accountability.
Life has meaning with responsibility. The more responsibility you take on, the more meaning your life has. And the higher degree of responsibility that you agree voluntarily to try to bear, the richer your life will be. And no one's ever told that, and it's the case. It's like you have 4 kids, say. Well, that's plenty of responsibility. You're going to have meaning. It's going to be rough, because it's complicated. You have a complicated job and you try to help the careers of the people around you. You try to solve tough problems and aid suffering and do all of that. It's like, it's weight, it's responsibility, but there's glory in it. There's real glory in it. There's deep meaning in it. And
the implication is that if your life was hard, maybe you were the root of the problem. The third thing that we keep coming back to is archetypes or myths. Peterson really loves archetypes. He draws from Jung, myth, and biblical stories, especially Genesis and Christ, to find universal truths about human nature. He sees these stories as psychological blueprints, not as a literal history.
so one of the things Jung did was he deeply studied the substructures of thought. So for Jung, we talked about Piaget a bit, and we said, for Piaget, you kind of built your brain from your body upward. Brilliant idea, it's so smart. But Jung has a lot of Piaget in him. It's more implicit. But for Jung, not only was the substructures of your thought biological, and so therefore based in your body, but your body was also cultural and historical. So partly because you're an evolved creature, and so God only knows what's in there. 3.5 billion years worth of weirdness that you can draw on, or that can move you where it wants to move you. But also, you're being shaped by cultural dynamics all the time. And human beings in particular, like we're just watching each other like mad all the time to see what we're up to, what people think of us, how we should be behaving, are we being boring, are people attracted to us? It's like we're social right to the core. And that's another way that you can understand an archetype. It's like part of the archetype is that we are social to the core. So we're interested in other people, and more if you're extroverted, and less if you're introverted, but it doesn't matter. By the standards of, say, solitary animals, we're so social, it's just unbelievable. And so that's built in. It's built in. What's built in is that you find that interesting. That's the archetype. The archetype is whatever it is that makes you find that interesting. It's beyond your control. Like if you're extroverted, you're interested in people. You didn't decide that. It decided it for you.
For evangelicals, it can feel kind of validating. Someone really smart or who sounds really smart is taking the Bible seriously and talking about it, bringing it more mainstream. But he's still centering the exact same narratives and the exact same moral structure. And yeah, it can sound like liberation, but it often just reaffirms the status quo that we're used to. Finally, we have the critique of postmodernism and identity politics. Peterson totally just rails against what he sees as the dangers of postmodernism, identity politics, and cultural Marxism. He argues that focusing on group identity fractures society, leads to resentment, and undermines personal responsibility and truth.
We believe that our sexual preference is our identity, for example. And that's, well, good luck with that. First of all, if your sexual preference is your identity, which means in some sense that that's the defining element of your character, I don't want to be anywhere near you. I mean that because what you want from other people is you want their desires to take you and the world into account. There's no possible way that things can work if it's not only all about you, let's say, but worse than that, it's all about whatever fragment of you, say biological, instinctual fragment that happens to have the upper hand subjectively within you at the moment.
This is straight out of the evangelical cultural war playbook. Just swap out cultural Marxism for secular humanism or moral relativism, and it's the exact same sermon that we heard growing up. The same fear that without tradition and truth, everything else falls apart. Let's zoom in on why Peterson resonates so much with people raised in evangelicalism and why it's worth unpacking.
Religious orientation fundamentally is the orientation towards what is true and right. And you might say, well, I don't know what's true and right. It's like, yeah, kind of, because our knowledge is bounded and we're ignorant. So do we understand the nature of the highest good? Well, no, but it's a very rare person who doesn't know some of the time when they're doing something wrong. And it's also a non-existent person who doesn't have some concept of the good, because you can't act without a concept of the good.
Peterson argues that hierarchies are natural, Evangelicalism taught us that hierarchies were God's will. And in Genesis, we see that man comes first and then women. Complementarianism, headship, and submission, it's all framed as sacred and part of God's plan. When Peterson talks about masculine order and feminine chaos, it's not new. It's the same ideology rebranded as psychology.
So here's what happens among men. The men all get together in their hierarchy. They posit a valued goal. They all accept that as the goal, because otherwise they wouldn't be cooperating.
Right.
Then they arrange themselves into a hierarchy, and they let the most competent guys lead because they want to get to the promised land. They want to get the most competent leaders leading.
Right.
Competent defined by that value. Okay, so here's what happens essentially. The men all get together and vote on the good men. And the good men are then chosen by the women, and those are the people who propagate. And so it's like men are voting on which men get to reproduce, and women are going along with the vote.
Evangelicalism was all about personal sin. If something was wrong in your life, it was between you and God. Peterson echoes that. If you're struggling, you need to fix yourself. The system is not the problem. You are.
You're always identifying the problem with the world as being something that some other person who isn't good like you is doing. And then what we do is we present young people in high school and in university with the notion that, well, if you really care about the world, there's nothing more honorable than you could do, that you could possibly do, than to become an activist. And I really kind of think that in some sense, there is almost no lower calling than active.
This can lead to shame, burnout, and self-blame, especially if you're dealing with, oppression, trauma, or systemic injustice. It reinforces the idea that you're not doing enough, or maybe you're not being enough, which is, it's a story that we've all heard way too many times sitting in the pews. When it comes to the Bible, the central holy book that Christians use, Peterson treats the Bible as a myth with deep meaning. Evangelicals treat the Bible as literal truth, but in both cases, the same themes are reinforced.
10 Commandments are manifestations of an underlying unity of moral conceptualization, and that they circulate around a particular theme. And the theme, you can express the theme quite concisely in a twofold manner. You should aim at what's best, God. You should align yourself with the highest possible aim. That's number one. So that orients you. And then number two, you should treat other people as you would like to be treated. You should put yourself in their position and work for that harmonious unity that would emerge if you treated other people the way you would want to be treated if you were treating yourself properly. You derive a set of principles as a consequence of that, but those principles themselves orient around something that's central. That central point of orientation, I think, is equivalent to God, and it's also equivalent to what we should have faith in.
There's a male savior, sacrificial suffering, hierarchical order, and he calls it archetype instead of doctrine, but the takeaway is ultimately the same. It's just that Peterson, at the end of the day, doesn't believe in a literal God or have a relationship with a literal Jesus Christ.
The Bible is true in a very strange way. It's true in that it provides the basis for truth itself. And so it's like a meta-truth. Without it, there couldn't even be the possibility of truth. And so maybe that's the most true thing. The most true thing isn't some truth per se. It's that which provides the precondition for all judgments of truth. I can't see any holes in that argument. And I can't see any holes in it from a scientific perspective either, because I think we do know well enough now as scientists that the problem of deriving ethical direction from the collection of facts is an intractable problem. There's too many facts. There's an infinite number of facts. They do not provide an unerring guide for action. They can't. There's too many of them. They have to be prioritized. And as soon as they are prioritized, well, then you're in the ethical.
Whether it's postmodernists, feminists, or trans activists, Peterson frames any sort of social movement as a threat to truth and order. That maps perfectly onto evangelical fears of the world and the left corrupting society. It reinforces this us versus them mindset that many of us are actively trying to unlearn. These ideas don't just live in books or podcasts or YouTube sermons. They shape how people think, how they act, and how people actually treat each other on a day-to-day basis.
We have this idea that we tell young people all the time, and I really do think this is an insidious invitation to their prideful narcissism. First of all, that they should be changing the world, which is a lot to change for people who haven't even been able to live independently yet. And also that if you do want to change the world, which is what you should do and what you could do, the way you do that is by being an activist. Activist has become professionalized since the mid-60s. So an activist seems to me to be someone who hypothetically advocates for the oppressed, which is already a moral danger. It's because, what the hell made you advocate for the oppressed? Did they elect you? Why are you the spokesman? And what gives you that moral virtue? But also, it comes with it this temptation, because if you're an activist, you're almost always against something, right? You're against industry, you're against fossil fuels, you're against the patriarchy, you're against...
So let's talk about the consequences. The first is the internalized shame. If you grew up evangelical, you probably already carried the belief that your problems were your fault. Peterson's framework can only deepen that. If you're not thriving, it's because you haven't taken on enough responsibility, you haven't confronted your dragon, and you haven't cleaned your room, maybe. That's not empowerment, that's pressure. And for people healing from religious trauma, it can really reopen old wounds. Then there's Peterson's language around masculine order and feminine chaos that reinforces the exact roles many of us are trying to escape. For women, it can subtly suggest that your value lies in being supportive, nurturing, and in order. For men, it can create the pressure to lead, to dominate, and to suppress their vulnerability. For anybody who does not fit into these rigid boxes, queer folk, non-binary people, sensitive men, or assertive women, the message is clear. You are the chaos. You are the problem.
This is the celebration of pride, the hedonistic celebration of pride. We have Pride Month. Well, what are we celebrating? First of all, how about we don't celebrate pride? Pride's a cardinal sin. And you might say, well, they don't mean pride. They mean, it's a group of oppressed people, and now they're just finding their identity and they're getting some security in that identity. And so what they mean by pride is security in that identity. It's like the word's pride. That's the word that was chosen. So I don't care what the lies around that are. And it's pride in relationship, as far as I can tell, to nothing but hedonistic self-gratification. It's like your identity is going to be your sexual desire. That's your identity.
Peterson doesn't claim religious authority, but his framework can feel eerily similar to the dynamics of spiritual abuse, which you guys have seen me talk about on this channel before. There is one truth. There is one right way to live. Questioning is dangerous. Emotions are suspect. If you're struggling, it's your fault. That's not healing. That's re-triggering. Peterson's influence goes way beyond self-help. His ideas are shaping political discourse, fueling opposition to social justice movements, and giving intellectual cover to regressive policies.
Being gay and in a long-term relationship, we are considering kids. What are your thoughts about gay people raising children? I think the devil's in the details, to tell you the truth. If I was ever talking to any individuals about that, the question is, well, how would you raise them? I mean, you have problems, right? If you're both of the same sex, then you're going to have the problem of how to provide the proper model for, let's say you have a boy and a girl. We know this is indisputable, and this is something I've talked to Warren Farrell about. Kids in intact heterosexual families where the father is present do way better on multiple indices than kids who are part of single-parent families. Now
when he frames systemic issues as resentment, it undermines real progress. It gives permission to ignore inequality and call it personal responsibility. So what now? How do we engage critically with Peterson's work without falling back into old patterns? How do we move forward? First, analyze it, don't absorb it. You're allowed to find his ideas helpful or interesting, but make sure that you're asking yourself, who benefits from this narrative? Have I heard this before? Does this make me feel empowered or ashamed? Is it addressing real systemic issues, or is it putting the burden back onto the individual? The second is reclaiming the word chaos. We were taught that chaos is bad, sinful, dangerous, and feminine. But chaos is also creativity. It's the unknown that leads to transformation.
That's why men have difficulty with women who are completely out of control.
But what is an out-of-control woman? What is this creature? How do we know when we met one?
Well, I'm sure that you've met women in your life that acted towards you in a bullying and detestable manner. It's very difficult for women to cope with that because they don't have any real recourse. And female bullying can be unbelievably vicious. And usually that takes the shape of reputation destruction.
We shouldn't fear chaos, we work with it and through it. Third, expand your influences. If Peterson helped you start asking questions, that's great. Keep going. Read other books. Read feminist writers, queer theologians, Black liberation thinkers, indigenous philosophers. Let your worldview be challenged from multiple directions. I personally read a lot of books, and honestly, by the end of most of them, I'm telling my fiance that I hate the author because I do completely disagree with their views. But by doing this, I have read things that have really opened my viewpoint, exposes me to points that I hadn't considered, and sometimes it does change my opinions. Then you don't need to conquer yourself. You don't need to fight dragons to be worthy, and healing doesn't just come from order alone. It comes from self-compassion, from community, and from rest, from accessing the right resources. And finally, don't replace one authority figure with another. You don't need somebody to hand feed you a rule book. Meaning can come from connection, justice, curiosity, and creativity, and you get to choose what matters. It can be easier to accept someone else's framework for your life in the beginning, but I promise you it is so much more fulfilling to ask yourself the hard questions, go through a level of deconstruction, even if it leads you back to God, and really understand yourself. If Peterson's work resonates with you or has shaped people in your life, that's okay. This is not about shame, it's really just about awareness. It's about understanding how the roots of certain beliefs can go, and how easily they can regrow if we're not careful. For Exvangelicals, the journey out of fundamentalism isn't just about leaving a church. It's about reclaiming your voice, your agency, and your story. That's not easy, but it is worth it. If you're watching this feeling confused, torn, or triggered, you're definitely not alone and you're not failing. You are growing, you are becoming, and you're daring to ask, what if there is a better way for me to live my life, for me to be a better human? And that in itself is holy. Thank you guys so much for watching. It means so much to me and I really, really do appreciate it. You have really created the space that I have dreamed of, where we can have Christians coming in and commenting their viewpoints and secular people commenting theirs, and it's not hateful, it's not mean, it is just great discourse, and I really appreciate that. I want this to be a bridge between the secular and religious worlds where we can have open conversations and understand each other a little bit better, because I do think that understanding is the foundation of compassion and love and for building a better future. So yeah, just thank you guys for that. You guys really are, if it was just me making these videos into a void, we wouldn't have that. It's because of each one of you commenting, liking, participating, sharing, joining in on the conversation, even if it's stuff that you don't necessarily agree with or like. I really do appreciate it. And like I said, you guys are the community. You guys are making this happen. So thank you so, so much. If you haven't subscribed to my channel yet, please subscribe or double check to make sure that you are. If you're not already, please like this video and comment. If you don't know what you want to say, you can always comment a white dove and I'll respond back to you. I always do my best to respond to as many comments as possible. So if you comment, it is, there's a good chance that I will reply to you. Please hit share and copy link. You don't have to send anywhere, I promise, but it helps way more than you think that it will. And I hope you guys have a great rest of your week. And yeah, I'll see you next time.
My favorite part of the Bible is when Jesus would ask someone if they could afford his miracles. And then when they said no, he would say, pull yourself up by your bootstraps. And then he would go in like grocery stores and harass people who didn't speak English and ask for their papers. It was so great.
So at first you never loved or liked your wife? I still don't. Wow. I'm joking, honey. I'm sorry. Please tell us about that. But it's true at the beginning, I didn't like nor want or was I attracted to my wife. I didn't want her at all. But isn't it good to know that God gives us what we need and not what we want?
Oh my
God,
He's the best.
And I put her through a lot. Yeah. She would tell you the first on the day of our wedding, I cheated on her with 2 women from our church. Pippin ain't easy. And I call her my Proverbs 31, but not because of the description of the verse, but because I cheated on her with like 30 women on the honeymoon, but she was the one that I brought back. Ditto. Just joking after joking. But I say that she had the heart of God. She had the heart of forgiveness. But see, oftentimes God will put you through hell to get you what you want. Or the things that you need, the things that he's giving you, you might have to go through hell to get it. And she understood that. She had the patience of God. She had the love of God. She had the sacrifice of God. And that's why this thing still worked. And I put her through hell. So why would you put someone through hell if that's what God wanted for you? You have to see, see, sometimes you have to go through it to get to it. Ooh, that's a word. If you look at the story of when God led the people out of Egypt, the house of bondage, they had to go through the desert to get to the land of milk and honey, and to get to the promised land. You were her promised land. Right? So she went through that desert. She went through it. And now we're at the promised land. But see, oftentimes people don't want to go through it to get to it. So when people see your story and they say, this is why I stay single. What I would say to people who hear our story, they're discouraged and they say, that's why I want to be. I'll say, that's why you're single. You run away from the hard stuff. Clock it. Okay, you run away from the test. Sometimes God tests us to see if we even worthy or deserving. I can tell you she's worthy of my love. That's a word. I understand that. She's worthy of your love. There was times where I would look at her and I'd be like, I don't like you. No. You're ugly. Same with my wife. She would say, I'm fearfully and wonderfully made. She would quote scripture back to me. Yes. She would say, you will love me. God will like me. We will have a great family. Yes. You know, we have 4 beautiful children. Beautiful family. None of them are from her. Oh. But she still takes care of them like they're her own. And that's why I love and appreciate her so much. We love a woman of God. She has that heart of God. Yes. And when your woman has the heart of God, she will pray for you. When I would leave and I would tell her I was nasty, I would say, hey, I'm going here and I'm going to do this. My God. And she would sit there and pray. You know, she would intercede on my behalf. Yes. And I feel like that's why nothing bad happened to me. I didn't catch any diseases while I was out there. And I know because my wife, she was that praying. She was that covering for you. She was that covering. Yes. And so when people see our love now, they say, you guys have such a great love now, it's but beautiful. You understand the fire and the desert that she went through. I want to see this promise by fire, purified. You know, and now we have a great marriage. Do I slip up sometimes? Often. Same. I'm just joking. God forgives. But this love is what it is now. Yes, because my wife has the heart of God. She has the forgiveness. She has that love, and for relationships to work, you have to have that forgiveness and that love. Yeah. And I appreciate you so much, honey, for staying by my side, even after all the scandals and everything. Wow, yeah. She stood by my side, hand in hand, in front of church. She's the one. I admitted when I was wrong. Yeah. She never looked bad at me. She never talked down on me. My God. She only lifted me up. She prayed for me. And that's why we are where we are today, but because of her love. See, that's why we need more God-fearing women, man.